we'll just start with the practicalities and introduction, so we don't miss out on any important updates. Here, you can see our tentative agenda. So this is just an indication of the elements we'll go through. Obviously, a quick update on the, a quick reminder on the EUDR, so we all have the same understanding. And then go deeper into some of the latest elements available to us throughout the FAQ and the guidance. We'll talk as well about how organizations can prepare and try to be compliant as soon as possible. Then we spend a bit of time talking together, trying to answer as many as the questions you might have. Very simply, a few housekeeping elements here. So we have presentations that would be shared with you participants afterwards. The session is currently being recorded. Only the recording of the actual presentations will be shared with you. Everything relating to questions and answers will not. So if that helps you, put your questions forward. Feel free. There's no impact or consequences. Regarding questions, there is a specific dedicated Q&A section on Teams, so you can find it in the toolbar at the top, where you can ask questions. Don't use the chat for that, please, even though we'll try to monitor it, but use the Q&A function specifically. What will happen is we'll try to answer as many questions in the chat as possible, and then some of the relevant ones will be taken to the end, where our experts can maybe go a little bit deeper into explaining or responding to these questions. Now you see my colleague Monica has put her email address on the slides here. If you have any technical issues with logging, sound, whatever, you can drop her an email. You can see the email address here, mk@pbn.org. And that's it for the very practical reasons. So I haven't introduced myself. So I'm Nicolas Pillet. I am based in France, and I'm a sustainability specialist at Preferred by Nature. So usually when questions around the EUDR in this region come up, they will end up with me. Today, as main speakers, we have our colleagues here listed on this slide. So Sandra Razana-Mandranto is our Regional Engagement and Communication Director. She has extensive experience with Preferred by Nature, but also within the private sector, and especially around production of commodities in Central and East Africa, West Africa, sorry. So she'll come to you at the end of the presentations talking about the solutions. David here has been with Preferred by Nature for many years now. I won't name how many. And he has been has played a key role in developing our EU Timber Regulation Responsible Sourcing Program, the Legal Source Program, and has extensive experience with due diligence-based regulation. And finally, Tim, our brilliant young mind, will have the ambitious task of summarizing the EUDR in 10 minutes to you guys. So here is the team of main speakers. But rest assured, we have a broader team of experts, some very much relating to the due diligence-based requirements, some more close to the actual production and commodities involved in this regulation. So here's just a sample of people who are in the shadows answering your questions and who can come up at the end trying to address your concerns. Now, a very brief introduction about Preferred by Nature. If you haven't listened to a webinar of ours before, we are a mission-driven organization, and our ambition is to support better land management and business practices that benefit the people, nature, and the climate. And how we do this is very much working at land use level, forests, farms, trying to improve the practices throughout the supply chains, working on transparency, traceability, and also with the end users, the consumer, the brands, the consuming markets, raising the bar in terms of sustainability-related ambition. How we actually do this? Through certification. So we have an assurance division, and we certify against credible, sustainable schemes. And there's quite a few in both agriculture and forestry we can work with. We have a sustainability advisory team tending to work on due diligence-based regulation, but also more ambitious sustainable commitments for organizations. We have some off-the-shelf trainings available. So capacity building is a strong suit in our activities, and also some mission-driven projects that we get funded for, and that can be working close to the ground with producers, or very much throughout supply chains and on the consuming markets as well, as mentioned just before. You can see here some figures about where we operate, how much surfaces and actors we've impacted over the years. More specifically about the EUDR, why we know and believe that we are relevant in that world, and where we can bring some value to your activities and support you towards this goal, is that obviously we've worked with our mission, which is very much aligned with the EUDR for the last 30 years. So I think we've gained a very strong experience in this world. We operate in most geographies, as I said, from production to consuming markets. And mention briefly, if you're not from the timber sector, the timber regulation is a kind of the grandparent of the EU Deforestation Regulation, where we've had like a strong role to play as a recognized monitoring organization, where we've developed tools and supported the private sectors in complying with these requirements. Recently, and if you have followed our activities, we've launched a due diligence toolkit, so not specifically dedicated to EUDR, but that supports organization that needs to comply with these requirements. And obviously, we try to share as much knowledge as possible. So today's webinar, but we've conducted over the last 18 months quite a few in a lot of languages, and sometimes specific to commodities or sectors. So that's it about us. Just before handing over to my colleague team, it's about time that we know a little bit more about you. So currently we've got about 230 people registered, and I have just a few questions I'd like to ask you, if that's okay, to know you a little bit better, but to help us, Preferred by Nature, drive our activities going further and support you the best way. So on your screen, will pop up a question now. And if you can take just a few seconds to tick the boxes where you, listeners, participants today, operate in. So it can be from land use, farm, forest, all the way to consumers, but also whether you are a consultant, a certification body, a researcher. Please try to take just a few seconds to fill in these information. I'll actually do mine here. Might be good. Okay, just a few more seconds, and then I've got 2 more questions for you. Okay, the next question is quite easy. I'd like to know which commodity you have an interest in, or you operate in, or want to know more about. Obviously, you can select more than one option in this poll, so please feel free. And I'll leave you just a few seconds. We can see timber very, very well represented here. Once again, this is anonymous. We don't know who's voting for which section. Just last few seconds. Excellent. And the last one, a bit more subjective maybe. Can you please try to rate your knowledge about EUDR from beginning? Obviously, you just, it's the first time you hear about it. Someone has sent you the link and asked you to participate in this webinar, to actually being an expert. You could almost, recite the text by heart. And obviously, we understand that, it's a journey, and there can be a whole lot of different level of understanding. This is useful for us to understand, if what we produce actually brings some relevant experience and understanding to people. Once again, Few more seconds. Excellent. We'll stick with that. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating. Now I'm going to hand over to Tim. Just don't be alarmed. A cat might appear on the screen at some point. It's a bit of an attention seeker, and Tim is fine.
Thank you, Nico. Hi, everyone. So I'll be taking the next 10 minutes or so to provide a very brief summary of the EUDR. It's a big topic. There's a lot to say. I will be focusing mainly on reminding of the main aspects of the regulation and specifically also focusing on the obligations for operators and traders. Let me see if I can get the next slide to move. There we go. Here, just a reminder of what we see are the main objectives of the EUDR in general. It's, of course, one, to minimize the consumption of products associated with deforestation and forest degradation, but also to increase the demand within the EU for legal and deforestation-free commodities and products. But what does the EUDR mean when they talk about deforestation-free products? So it's stated in the regulation that for a product, deforestation-free means that a product is being made with, or in the case of cattle, fed with, a commodity that was grown on land where no deforestation has occurred since the 31st of December 2020. This is extended to wood products where also no forest degradation since the same date is included as a criteria. Deforestation is defined as the conversion of forest to agricultural use, and forest degradation just means the structural change of the forest cover. The EUDR further describes 8 legality requirements that also need to be assessed. So when the regulation talks about a product needs to be deforestation free and legal, these 8 legal categories need to be assessed. So it needs to be made sure that the relevant legislation of all of these, of the laws within these categories are complied with, of course, within the country of production. So where the commodity is produced, these laws within these categories need to be complied with. Looking very quickly at the timeline. So of course, as probably or hopefully everyone here has already been made aware of, the EUDR has been postponed. So the date of application has now been moved 12 months. So now it is, instead of the 30th December 2024, 30th December 2025. This also applies to small and micro enterprises, which already have this built-in extension of 6 months. For them, the date of application is now the 30th of June 2026. So that means all operators and traders have received 6 months extra, 12 months extra to comply or to prepare for the EUDR. The scope, so of course, the commodities that are in scope of the EUDR are the 7 commodities on this slide. Annex 1 of the regulation specifies certain custom codes and products for each commodity. And so it lists the specific products that are in scope of the EUDR. So if you're in doubt whether your product is in scope or not, the first thing to do would be check Annex 1 to see if that customs code is listed there. There are, of course, some exceptions. So one being recycled material, it means material made from waste or residue, or material that's at the end of its life cycle is not included or not in scope of the EUDR. Then there's also packaging. So packaging, of course, made from a relevant commodity, so paper or cardboard. If the packaging is used to support, protect, or carry another relevant product or another product in general, then packaging is not included in the EUDR and no obligations apply. However, if the packaging is if the packaging itself is the product, then packaging is included in the EUDR. So an example for this would be if I am supplying my clients with paper, I will maybe deliver my paper, my stacks of paper on a wooden pallet. In this case, the wooden pallet, which is carrying, protecting the actual product, which is the paper, is not included. However, if I was to supply the wooden pallet itself, it would be in scope of the EUDR. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Now let's move on to the main actors of the regulation, the operators and traders. An operator is any entity that is placing a relevant product on the EU market or exporting a relevant product from the EU market. Placing a relevant product or commodity on the market means it's being made available for the first time. And making available means that a product is being supplied in course of a commercial activity. So then on the other hand, we have traders. Traders are any actor who are not operators, who are making a relevant product available on the EU market. I would like to try and make the difference between operators and traders clearer with this next slide. So one thing we like to do is we like to split the operator into different actors or into different roles, because depending on what activities the operator has, it will change the obligations they have as well. So we have the two first operators, the importer and the domestic operator. The importer is, of course, any entity that is, importing a relevant product from outside of the EU into the EU, and they're taking this product through customs procedure to then place it on the market within the EU. A domestic operator is growing or producing a relevant commodity within the EU and then placing it on the market. Then we have the downstream operator, what we call the downstream operator. This is an entity that buys a relevant product that has already been placed on the EU market. And then they take this product, they process it or manufacture it into a new relevant product and then place that product on the market. And then the difference, or where we then differentiate between the operator and the trader, on the other hand, like the downstream operator, buys a relevant product that has already been placed on the market, but instead of processing it into a new product, they just sell or supply this product as it is and make it available on the market. So here's the kind of the difference we have between the operator and the trader. Then, of course, we also have the exporter. The exporter, takes a product that is on the EU market and takes it through customs procedure and exports it. Let's now look at the specific or the main obligations for each of these actors. So we have the first operators, which were the importers and the domestic operators. Here, it doesn't really matter if they're an SME or a non-SME, so if they're a small, medium, or a large company. The first operators have generally all of the obligations. So of course, they have the main obligations of the regulation. They need to exercise due diligence, which means they need to collect information, they need to assess risks, and they need to mitigate these risks. And then they also need to submit a due diligence statement. Submitting a due diligence statement means they take some of the information that they have collected about their products, about the origin of their products, and they need to upload this in form of a due diligence statement to the so-called due diligence information system. The information system is an EU-provided platform where this kind of information can be uploaded and shared. Then the first operators also need to implement a due diligence system. A due diligence system is a set of documented procedures describing how the company will be exercising due diligence, and it should allow the company to exercise due diligence effectively. Then there are also some other obligations. They're not all listed here on the slide. These are just the core obligations. Other obligations include that the operator needs to be able to make information available to the competent authorities upon request. And then there's also the annual reporting, although this only applies to non-SMEs. Then moving on to the downstream operators. Here, we do need to distinguish between an SME and a non-SME downstream operator. Just as a reminder, the downstream operator was the company that buys a relevant product that's already on the market, transforms it into something new, and then places that product onto the market. The SME downstream operator does not have to exercise due diligence under two conditions. So one, if the product that they're making available, if it's already been subject to due diligence, so if the previous operator has already done the due diligence, and if a due diligence statement has already been submitted. In this case, the SME operator does not need to do due diligence, and they don't need a due diligence system. What they do need, regardless, or kind of the only obligation they have, is to collect and maintain the due diligence statement reference numbers related to their products. So they need to make sure that they have these reference numbers, and they need to be able to make them available to the competent authorities upon request. The non-SME downstream operator, so the large company that's a downstream operator, they do have due diligence obligations. However, they're able to reduce those obligations. They're able to change the scope of their due diligence. So what they can do is when they submit their due diligence statement, or within their own due diligence statement, they can reference previously submitted due diligence statements. So due diligence statements for the same product that they've bought and that have already been submitted, they can reference these within their due diligence statement, creating a chain of due diligence statements, which ideally should contain all of the supply chain information for this specific product and commodity. However, they're only able to reference a due diligence statement within their own statement if they have ascertained, so if they have ensured that due diligence was exercised properly before by the previous operator. Now, what it means practically for a company to ascertain or to ensure that due diligence was done properly was a bit of a mystery for us for a long time, just because it's not elaborated at all in the regulation text itself. However, with the recent guidance and FAQ, there have been some clarifications and some more concrete examples of what it means. This is something that David will be touching upon in just a moment. Otherwise, the non-SME downstream operator has all of the same obligations as the first operator. So they also need to implement a due diligence system, and they also need to report. Then let's move on to the trader. We'll start with the non-SME trader because this is the simplest one. They have the same obligations as the non-SME downstream operator, so the operator we were just talking about. The SME trader, so the small trader, has the least amount of obligations out of all actors. They only need to collect basic information on their suppliers and their buyers. And they also need to keep the due diligence statement reference numbers and, of course, be able to make them available to competent authorities upon request for 5 years. So this is the end of my very quick and brief summary of kind of the main obligations. In my last slide, I really just want to remind of the information requirements. So the information that operators and non-SME traders need to collect and also upload to the information system. So here the information in the first row, the description of the product, the quantity, the country of production, and the geolocation, this is the information that needs to be included in a due diligence statement, either by the operator including that information themselves or referencing a previous due diligence statement. And with that, I will hand over to David, who will be giving us some insights into the most recent FAQ and guidance. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Tim, and everyone for attending today. So many of us were possibly distracted by the ongoing process to amend the EU Deforestation Regulation last year. However, there is a lot of information contained in the guidance and FAQ, some of which is pretty important and may have fallen under people's radars. So for today, we've selected just a few interpretations, hopefully of broad relevance to many of you. But let me start just by taking the main two documents in turn. So starting with the EUDR guidance document, this was published as a European Commission notice in the official journal of the EU last November. The guidance contains 11 chapters, as you can see from the image on the left, on a range of topics. One interesting thing is how the guidance refers to itself. As a Commission notice, it carries weight because it reflects the Commission's official stance on topics related to the EUDR. However, it is a subordinate document to the regulation. It cannot replace, add to, or amend the provisions of the EUDR. Secondly, version 3 of the FAQ was published in October last year. It is a working document developed by DG Environment and serves as an interpretive document for the regulation. Actually, translations of the FAQ are now available in French and German, in addition to English. If anyone knows of any other, or when other translations are coming, then feel free to add that to the Q&A. I'd be interested. In version 3 of the FAQ, in our analysis, we counted a total of 129 questions. 44 of those, or responses, 44 of those were new responses. 56 responses were to questions that appeared in previous versions of the FAQ, but with some changes, some of them significant changes. And 29 responses out of the 129 were exactly the same. So overall, the guidance in the FAQ, there are a lot of welcome clarifications, but I have to say the documents also create some new ambiguities, some of which I'll raise in the next few minutes. And let's start with just the first, understanding which entities are an operator under the EUDR. So the guidance in the FAQ are quite helpful here. The guidance, the FAQ, I should say, makes a distinction such that in the case of relevant products imported into the EU via the customs procedure released for free circulation, an entity is an operator, irrespective of whether this is for processing, own use or consumption, or supply or distribution to others of that product. In other words, whatever the importer is doing with that product doesn't really matter, they're still an operator. However, in the case of relevant products produced in the EU or new products manufactured in the EU, placing on the market requires supply of the relevant product. In other words, an entity is an operator only when this involves supply to others. In this context, a supply is an agreement between two or more parties for the transfer of ownership of the product. So we can see just an interpretation of this more visually. In the first scenario, an entity importing a relevant product via the customs procedure is an operator, again, regardless of what they're doing with that product. In the second scenarios, if a forest or farm is producing or harvesting a relevant product in the EU and supplying it to others, they will be an operator. Likewise, a manufacturer based within the EU is making a new relevant product available on the market and supplying it to others, they will be also an operator. However, if the forest or farm is producing or harvesting a relevant product, but this is for own consumption or use, they will have no obligations under the EUDR. Why? Because no supply is taking place. Likewise, with a manufacturer, they're making a new relevant product, but this is perhaps for own consumption or for own use. Again, they will have no obligations under the EUDR because no supply is taking place. Second topic, operators outside of the EU. So the FAQ and guidance clarifies the role of non-EU actors' obligations. Non-EU actors must exercise due diligence and submit a due diligence statement if they are placing relevant products, customs clearing those products on the EU market. And remember that Article 7 of the EUDR itself also states that the next entity in line in this scenario, in other words, the first natural legal person established in the EU, also has the obligations of an operator. Let's look at that visually. In this scenario, two organizations are considered operators. The first is the non-EU based operator. If they're responsible for customs clearance, they must exercise due diligence and submit a due diligence statement. Secondly, the first operator established within the EU, sorry, the first entity established within the EU also has the obligations of an operator. Why am I talking about this now? I think as preferred by nature, we're not exactly sure of the volume of relevant products being imported by entities based outside the EU, but we're probably, we're concerned that many companies working under these types of scenarios are not aware that they may have obligations as far as the regulation goes. Third topic, entity size class thresholds. So the EUDR, as I'm sure you're well aware, employs size class thresholds found in the accounting directive, for entities with obligations. In other words, if you have different obligations under the EUDR according to whether you're a micro, small, medium, or large enterprise. However, one of the questions in the FAQ raised a more recent amending directive, which changes those size class thresholds. So to clarify, as I'm sure you're aware, for micro and small enterprises, the EUDR becomes enforceable to them as of the 30th of June 2026. For this to apply, the company must consider their size as of the 31st of December 2020, before this amending directive was adopted. However, in relation to just general obligations as an operator or trader, for example, whether you're an SME or a non-SME downstream operator or trader, the size classes of the amending directive are relevant. So it's important to look at those size classes and determine just what your obligations are now once the EUDR becomes applicable to you. Do be aware that the amending directive has not been yet transposed into national law in all member states, so you will have to check that. It was supposed to have been transposed into national law across the EU by the end of last year, but not all countries have done that. So I won't talk to this slide. This will be obviously in the presentation that we send, but this is just a visual of the differences and the changes in size class thresholds across the different entity categories of micro, small, medium, and large. So the guidance in the FAQ also clarifies certain products which are outside the scope of the regulation if they're made from non-relevant commodities. This was actually not fully clear before this guidance, so the clarification is welcome. Excluded products for the EUDR are babassu oil, various rubbers or gums produced with species other than natural rubber, Havea brasilensis, synthetic rubber products, obviously, rattan products, and bamboo. Important point here. One of the critical questions around the EUDR has been which relevant commodities within a single relevant product an operator should do due diligence on. The answer was not entirely clear. To many, it's now clarified, but it's still not entirely clear to preferred by nature. We don't have time to go into the analysis of the various texts and the wording of the different documents. I've put them here in the slide for review at a later point, but just focus on the red boxes, which I'm going to highlight now. The regulation text. In our reading, it requires that all relevant commodities within a relevant product require due diligence to have the status of being deforestation free. In other words, there's no limiting language selecting only specific commodities of the product as requiring due diligence. The guidance, chapter 9, composite products, requires that for relevant products, if these contain or are made from other relevant products, then due diligence is required on those. And then finally, the FAQ is the clearest of all. Due diligence needs to be applied only on the main relevant commodity within the relevant product. Okay, so to illustrate this, just consider, let's say, the import of chocolate spread into the EU, containing cocoa powder, butter, palm oil, and let's say soy lecithin. Which ingredients are subject to due diligence? The EU text implies that due diligence is required for the cocoa butter, cocoa powder, the palm oil, and the soy lecithin for the relevant product to have the status of being deforestation free. The guidance suggests that due diligence is required only for the cocoa products and the palm oil. Soy lecithin is not a relevant product. And the FAQ requires that for the chocolate spread, only due diligence is only required in the cocoa powder and the cocoa butter. What is our viewpoint? Look, we understand that most stakeholders are following the lead of the FAQ. They would only look at cocoa butter and cocoa powder as requiring due diligence. And we're not trying to create a problem here from preferred by nature, but we do feel it is our duty just to highlight where we see these inconsistencies between the relevant documents. The objective obviously being to avoid that stakeholders are not aware of these issues and perhaps incorrectly preparing for the regulation. Approach this topic as you see fit. We've raised this issue with the Commission. We hope for some further clarification. Just remember that while the EUDR, however, while you may only look at one commodity as part of the EU Deforestation Regulation obligations, there are other EU laws that may require that you do due diligence for all commodities. So keep that in mind. As Tim showed earlier, the EUDR takes a flexible approach as regards which laws are covered under each of the 8 categories of the definition of relevant legislation. And again, Chapter 6 of the guidance is welcome. It tries to clarify which of those types of law that can be considered as applying under each of the 8 categories. There's general guidance as well as specific examples of laws which are provided for each of those 8 categories. So it's quite helpful. The general guidance speaks to only laws being included in the relevant legislation if they impact the legal status of the area of production. And the guidance also tries to connect or states that laws can be considered relevant if they address the objectives of the EUDR. So that would be halting deforestation, reducing the EU's contribution to climate change and biodiversity loss. The challenge for us is that the guidance doesn't, specifically with regards to labour rights, is that the guidance does not provide specific examples of law relating to labour rights. but again seeks to connect relevant laws related to labour rights with the objectives of the EUDR. And that's led to confusion. How do rules governing child labour or worker rights relate to biodiversity or climate change? So what we're seeing from our conversations with stakeholders is that this ambiguity is causing many of them to deprioritize labour rights in their due diligence. Again, what is our viewpoint here? I think we would caution against that deprioritization or reducing of the importance of this category of law, labour rights, in your due diligence systems. At least at this point, I suspect that further clarification will come from the Commission on this topic. Anyway, keep in mind, again, your due diligence on legal risks in relation to labour rights will possibly serve your compliance with other laws, other EU laws relating to similar topics, whether it's the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, Forced Labour Regulation, or others. Next topic, tax, another category of the relevant legislation, tax, anti-corruption, trade and customs. So as I referenced earlier, the EUDR requires that risks of legal non-compliance of relevant legislation be assessed at the level of the area of production. In other words, where the commodities were produced or harvested, or the establishments where cattle were raised. For this category of legislation, tax, anti-corruption, trade and customs laws, customs regulations, however, the text of the guidance appears to go beyond the area of production and raise the need for due diligence along supply chains, right? So it refers to applicable laws concerning the relevant supply chains entering the union market or leaving it. Why is that an issue, or what is the concern here? It's really critical that the Commission provides clarity on their expectations here in relation to the EUDR. It will be a surprise, we believe, to many companies that they should be looking and conducting due diligence along supply chains, at least for these tax and customs laws, as part of their due diligence, rather than just at the forest or farm level. In the meantime, I think until we have clarification, then companies will have to take a position on this and decide whether they want to be looking at conducting risk on these types of law along supply chains or not. Independently of the EUDR, actually, while we just want to see clarification on this point, we would encourage organizations to consider risks of legal non-compliance, at least for trade and customs laws, along supply chains anyway. I mean, you only need to look at the Earthsite report that was published yesterday. The one it exposes the EU trade in illegal Russian birch plywood, to understand why it's really important to include legal compliance issues along the whole supply chain in your due diligence. So this is my second to last slide. I hope I'm not over time. Guidance on is provided by or guidance providing. Let me start again. The guidance provides some helpful clarifications in relation to the concept of ascertain that Tim referred to earlier. Basically, it mostly relates to the intensity of the verification process that ascertaining can entail. What do we mean by that? So not every, as you're aware, downstream non-SME or downstream operators or non-SME traders may require to ascertain the quality of the due diligence being conducted by upstream supply chain entities. Not every upstream due diligence statement needs to be checked. Logically, a more systems level approach can be applied by that downstream operator or non-SME trader. So in this context, ascertain can mean ensuring the upstream operator has in place a due diligence system that is fully integrated into its operational activities. and up to date in terms of the latest interpretations and guidance. It obviously needs that due diligence system is being implemented effectively and is robust enough to mitigate and manage effectively, risks which are being identified. In other words, a 100% approach to ascertaining or to verification is not necessary. Ascertaining can mean checking only a sample of due diligence statements, a sample of geolocations, or even applying a risk-based approach to check only higher risk products and suppliers. The issue is that there's a methodology is applied and that methodology is justified. So I'm on my last slide now. Finally, I won't dwell on this. Again, this is a slide that will provide with you with the presentation for sort of further study, but there is a calendar of outputs from the Commission and other institutions over 2025 that you may wish to be aware of. Probably the three most important outputs, if you like, of the year will be the publication of the country benchmarks, probably around the middle of this year. Additional FAQ and possibly guidance also. In fact, version 4 of the FAQ is already being worked on. We are aware of that. And the release of the third version of the Global Forest Cover 2020 Deforestation Map by the Joint Research Centre via the EU Observatory on Deforestation. And with that, I think I will pause there and hand to Sandra, who will then take over from here. Thank you.
Right. So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, David and team, to explain the latest updates and interpretation of the regulation. And it's now over to me to present you the tools that Preferred by Nature has developed to support organizations in their EUDR compliance journey. So these slides show basically the proposed approach that we have at Preferred by Nature, which is a stepwise, step-by-step approach. And we are advising you to start first understanding the regulation, so learn the requirements and determine if it's applicable to you. Once you have done that, you can start investigate and assess your level of readiness today. You can do that through different ways, through gap analysis, benchmarking the EUDR with your current system. You can map, engage with your supply chain, engage with buyers, understand what type of information you need to collect and provide to your operators. And once you have done that, you can move with the planning, right? So set up your action plan, which means that you need to allocate enough human resource, but also financial resource, right, to make strategic decisions that should be, of course, endorsed at the management level of your organization. When this is done, of course, it's time for implementing. Develop or upgrade your system, which means that you can align your policies, develop your due diligence system, your procedures, traceability system in place, ensure you have internal and external capacity building. And finally, you can move to the ongoing compliance, where you it's advised that you also do periodic evaluation of your performance, do regular reporting, seek for certification or verification of your own operations, and make sustainable claims. So you see the calendar in the down of the slides, which is also the suggested and proposed timeline. Of course, by mid of this year, companies should be ready for implementation. Of course, we know that you have now a benefit for a bonus of 12 months. That said, we have, as I mentioned, developed a couple of tools, which I'm going to present now. Tools and solutions to support organizations in meeting the EUDR requirements. So we have actually, till date, supported about 200 organizations in meeting their, getting ready to comply with EUDR. And those tools have also been refined based on the feedback, based on the demands, the needs. and some of them have also gone through public consultations. So you will see that some of those tools are available and accessible for free on our website. And you will see this logo at the down right part, the open source logo, that will indicate that those tools will be available for free download. And those tools are the first one, which is the EUDR scoping tool. It's a tool to help you determine your role and obligation under the EUDR. Then we have the EUDR training course as well, important capacity building solution. We do have also the Preferred by Nature due diligence toolkit that will help you to set up your due diligence system. We have then the more tailored advisory services that support your journey in being EUDR compliant. We do have our sourcing hub that we use as a risk management tool, the third-party certification also as a risk management tool, but also risk mitigation tools. We do have the Preferred by Nature certification that can be used as gap analysis, benchmarking, or verification tool. And then at last, we have a market access program for smallholders. So let me then detail each of them now, starting with the EUDR scoping tool. So the EUDR scoping tool is a self-assessment tool that can be used by companies to assess their role and obligations under the EUDR. It is most relevant for companies based inside the EU and that have direct obligations under the EUDR, but it can also be used by company outside the EU. So it has also recently been updated with the updated frequently asked questions, and it consists of basic questions about your company, your sourcing habits and operations. It will take into account your position in the supply chain, your size, the commodity specific. It should not take longer than 5 minutes to complete and provide immediate results that will include specific obligations under the EUDR. So as you see, it's available on our website or with scanning this QR code. Then let me move to the EUDR training course. So Preferred by Nature, we do have a training hub which offers today online and face-to-face courses all over the world in various languages and in various topics. But we have also now updated with EUDR module and due diligence module, which consists of the current, the section that are listed here. We will tackle EUDR due diligence system setting, traceability, supply chain identification and management, supply chain risk assessments, deforestation-free requirements, deforestation risk mitigation, reporting, and we will also present concrete case studies as well. So this EUDR module course will be launched soon. It's actually consists of one-day course, face-to-face course. And if I'm not mistaken, we will have the first ones in March, targeting the timber sector first, with a course in UK and another course in Germany. So if you want to know more, please visit our website or let us know. The third solutions and tools we have developed, and not the least, that one actually, is the Preferred by Nature due diligence toolkit. This one was actually recently launched a couple of days ago, in fact, so it's the latest baby of Preferred by Nature. So what is the Preferred by Nature due diligence toolkit? It aims basically to facilitate the implementation of effective due diligence systems. So it helps organizations to implement due diligence system. It is applicable for forestry, agricultural commodities, both inside and outside the EU. And it is also aligned with the Preferred by Nature certification, which I'm going to talk about in some slides, and aligned with the due diligence mandate of the EUDR. So the toolkit is organized this way. So it has a set of tools that will help you first to set up your system, right? Once you have set up your systems, that you have access to tools that will help you to identify your supply chain, map your supply chain, get information. Then tools to also assess the risk, legality risk and deforestation risk in your supply chain. Then there will be tools that will help you to respond to those risks if they have been identified, setting up mitigation measures, and finally, a set of tools that will help you with reporting requirements and also the transparency reporting requirements. So it consists basically of 24 Word and Excel documents organized in 9 guides. There are 13 templates and 2 sample procedures. So how to access it? So if you're fast, you can scan this QR code. Otherwise, you can just go on our website, you enter your personal information, you can download it in a zip file, and you can also choose actually to receive additional information email or decided not to get any emails from us. It is up to you. So this tool is, as I was mentioning, free to download, right? And it's published under the Creative Commons license, which means what? It means that you can then get the documents for free. You can use it, copy, modify, merge, do what you want with. However, we are asking then to credit Prefer by Nature and our website, especially on documents that you want to put publicly. And because we are, of course, interested to see how you're using it and how you might modify it and perhaps to also improve it as well, we would appreciate if you, you notify us for any change that you're doing with the toolkit. Good. Now we also have a set of tools, more specifically than that is tailored to organization based on their needs. So this is the tailored advisory services that we have. And so, of course, we know that organizations are at different stage of readiness, right? But still, you may want to, to look at which pieces of this puzzle might be missing for you. And this slide actually highlights nicely, it has a nice overview of all the activities that you need to ensure to put in place to make sure that you are on your way to EUDR compliance. So for example, you need to make sure that you have your public policy commitment in place, you have your due diligence procedures in place, a qualified team, a trained and qualified team as well, that you have identified and map your supply chain. You have a strong, traceable supply chain system in place, that you also have sufficient information to do your risk assessment, that you know how to assess your risk on illegality or deforestation, that you can set risk mitigation measures, also that you have put in place a performance evaluation system, and finally, that you have a report on your due diligence. So at Prefer by Nature, we can support you at each of those steps that you would like to emphasize more. We do also want to present you our sourcing hub that is used as a risk management tool. So many of you might have heard already about our sourcing hub. What is it? The sourcing hub is a platform which have global resources to understand the sustainability risks in agriculture and forestry supply chains. So basically, it helps you to support the decision-making from all the places in the supply chain, from production through processing, transport, and trade. So it's a database that contains risk assessment, but not only that, we are also trying to propose here risk mitigation options and measures based on the risk that you have identified. We also propose to have background country information, key text, legislation text, and other tools and resources. So we are also working to extend the sourcing hub with additional commodities that are covered in the focus of EUDR, but also extends to geographical regions with key producing countries or regions. So for that, we have tried to found and actually be member of the Risk Information Alliance. The Risk Information Alliance, RIA, is an alliance of organizations that share the same interest and wants to also expand the development of credible risk assessments to meet the need of stakeholders. This initiative is supported and funded by ICIL. If you are interested to know more or join us, please also let us know. I'm moving on with the list of tools we have. So the sixth one is the third-party certification. Third-party certification, we have lots of questions in the past regarding this. So we know that certification is not a green lane under the EUDR context, right? To be in conformity with the EUDR requirements. However, certified material are an important tool to meet the due diligence requirements, comparing if you're sourcing from non-certified material. So certified material basically are today a strong risk mitigation measures. So what we are advising to organization is if you source from certified material or are yourself certificate holders, benchmark the scheme under which you are certified and benchmark it against the EUDR. Identify the the gaps if there are any, and then address the gaps that are not covered in the certification scheme. So today, actually, some of the international certification schemes have already fast adapted their standard to meet the EUDR requirements, which is the case of the FSC regulatory module that has put in place a voluntary add-on for FSC chain of custody and forest management clients that will enable certified companies to make regulatory claims. It's also the case for PFC that has an EUDR due diligence system, which has put in place a voluntary modular standard for PFC chain of custody certified organization. And also the case for the Rainforest Alliance that has put in place deforestation risk assessment tool, which is, EUDR self-selected criteria for cocoa and coffee certificate holders. So preferred by nature, we are actually we are proud to say that we are one of the few CBs that is accredited now to deliver the FSC regulatory module. And we've just actually passed successfully the accreditation for the PFC EUDR due diligence system. And we are going to wait for the approval in a couple of days. Sorry. Staying in the world of certification, I also want to present you now another tools, which is the preferred by nature certification. I know there's many tools to present. The preferred by nature certification is actually a certification framework that is developed by Preferred by Nature following the ICIL requirements, and that is also aligned with the EUDR requirements. So what we have done is that we have translated the EUDR requirements into 46 indicators. So we have the core documents and also annexes, like the system requirements, which includes quality management aspects to align with the EUDR. We do have the due diligence requirements that include the due diligence system, supply chain management aligned with the EUDR requirements. And we also have the chain of custody and traceability, which also includes traceability alignments that requirements that are aligned with the EUDR. So the preferred by nature certification will also help basically the organization for decision making for operators, for all actors in the supply chain. So it can be used actually at all levels in the supply chain, at the field level and for due diligence as well. It's applicable to any country or region, to any EUDR commodities, adapted to any scale of operation as well. It will come with a verification report. And also quite interesting, it's very much linked with the additional tools that I have presented earlier, such as the sourcing hub and the due diligence toolkit. So you can use the preferred by nature certification in combination with those tools as well to optimize your results. So yes, again, you can use the Preferred by Nature certification to do the benchmarking of your system, your private standard, international certification standard. You can use it to do your internal monitoring, to do your gap analysis as well of your current system. And you can use it, of course, as a third-party certification, asking for third party to come and verify your operations. But all those documents are available to download on our website. So this will be my last slide. I know you are waiting for the Q&A session. So I just want to very rapidly also present the Preferred by Nature Market Access Program for smallholders. So we know that smallholders struggles with the increasing demand for documentation to try to meet the regulatory standard. And often we know that it's in favor of larger companies, right? So Preferred by Nature's Market Access Program for smallholders seeks to foster a more inclusive and sustainable market ecosystem for everybody. And these are projects that aims to support smallholder access to market in the context of EUDR as well. So the concept of these projects will focus on, of course, first collaboration with first mile actors, can be funders, traders, mills, and other first mile actors to establish a robust and a strong due diligence system, making sure that there is a verification and training. So implementing a verification system and develop a comprehensive training program to complying with EUDR. We also want to make sure this is outcome focused, meaning that we want to prioritize impacts over bureaucratic processes, and that's to make sure that the risk has been identified at the smallholder level and they are mitigated to favor smallholder inclusions. So yes, so I'm ending now, and I want to thank you for your attention and for following the slides. And I think now it's over to you, Nicola, with the Q&A session.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Thanks to my three colleagues here who brought this complex, technical, sometimes confusing topic to you guys and try to make it into something digestible. So well done again.